Hello. Today we're going to start our work in probability, and we're going to be looking at something called the fundamental principle of counting, which is a very fancy name for a very straightforward idea. And to look at it, we're going to look at a practical example. In a cafe, we can order drinks and snacks. We could order tea, coffee, or water for our drinks, and we could order scones or ice cream for snacks. How many different orders can we make? So how many different ways could we combine our options? How many different options could we end up with in total? So let's list out, to begin with, let's list out all of the different possible outcomes, all of the different possible orders. So we could have tea, and with our tea we could have a scone. That's one option. We often put it in brackets with commas in between. Or we could have coffee in the scone. Or we could have water in the scone. Or we could have tea and some ice cream. Or we could have coffee and some ice cream. Or we could have water and some ice cream. So we can see that we have listed out all of the different types of orders that we could have. We've covered all of the different possibilities. I can have a drink and I can have a snack. And I've listed out all of the different possible outcomes that I could have, all the different possible orders. And how many of them do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are 6 possible orders that I could make when I go into my cafe. Now, so there are 6 possibilities, 6 options. So we can just list out all of our options, but there is a faster way. In general, we can say that the total number of options is equal to the number of options for A. We'll say the drinks would be our first group of options, and B would be the options we have for our snacks. So our number of options for our drinks for A multiplied by our options for B. And we remember that brackets mean multiply. So the total options available to us are the options for our first group of things, our drinks, multiplied by the number of options we have for the second group of things. And it doesn't just have to be 2 things. We could also have sandwiches that had different options, and we could have had 3 different options for our sandwiches, and we'd have multiplied by those 3 options as well. So in this case, our total options would be the number of options for our drinks, which would be 1, 2, 3. We have 3 options for our drinks. That's what I've called options for Group A. Group A was our drinks, and Group B was our snacks. So that's scones or ice creams. That's 2 options, and 3 by 2 is 6. So by multiplying the number of different options we have for each group of things, we can find out how many options we have in total. Now, that's the fundamental principle of counting. So this is actually the fundamental principle of counting, that if we have a group of options, one group of options, another group of options, the combined group of options is going to be multiplying them together. This bit here is our fundamental principle of counting. Now, let's talk about some other useful things that are connected to this. If we list out all of our possible outcomes, like we did here, this is called the sample space. So the sample space is a list of all of the possible outcomes. So we can call that sample space. We have to know that word because it can come up in a question. They can ask us for the sample space of the question, and then we can just list out all of our options. But there's a tool that we have available to us that can help us with listing all of our possible options. Because if we get a bigger problem that has a lot more than 6 options, it can get confusing and we can miss out on options that we should contain in our list. So there's something called a two-way table that helps us keep track of all of the possible outcomes. And what we do is we draw a table as so, and we have our 3 options here are tea, coffee, or water. Our options for our drinks, tea, coffee, and water. That'll go along the top. And our options for our snacks would be our scones and our ice cream would go along the side. Now we have a table, and in this part of the table, we'd say that we were picking tea and a scone. Here we would have coffee and a scone. So where these instructions intersect with each other, where they cross over each other. So this is the coffee group, this is the scone group. Where they cross each other is the coffee and scones group. This is the water group, this is the scones group. So this is the water and scones where they intersect each other. And here we have tea and ice cream. Tea and ice cream. This is coffee and ice cream. This is water and ice cream. And this is a two-way table, and it gives us exactly the same result as the sample space. These are both sample spaces. It gives us exactly the same result as just trying to write out the list, but it means that we have a visual guide for all of the possible outcomes. So when questions get more complicated, using a two-way table is extremely important for keeping track of all of our possible outcomes. And that is what we need for our fundamental principle of counting. So again, this is the fundamental principle of counting. The total number of options available to us is take the options from each of our individual parts of our question and multiply them together. That's our fundamental principle of counting. A sample space is a list of all of the possible outcomes for a situation. And a two-way table is something that helps us to write our sample space, and it will be very important for more advanced probability questions that we will do later on. And that is what we need for now.